1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Hello and welcome back to The Author Has Thoughts. I'm the author in question, Gary Ballard. I have been doing a series of my Various and Sundry videos. In this case, I'm talking about something very topical, the 2020 pandemic, coronavirus, COVID, whatever. So without further ado, let's continue the video. Let's start motherfucking the government for a minute. And I'm going to throw two huge caveats out here. First one. You all know my politics if you watch this channel at any time. Okay? I am very clearly not a Republican, even though in the past I have been. I am very clearly liberal, and I will be voting Democrat because I refuse to vote for a Republican because of what they've done to our country. Not to say the Democratic Party and the DNC has not made colossal fuck-ups in the past and continue to try to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. All that's it. That's a caveat of my political leanings. So now you know where I'm coming from, and if that offends you little fifis, get the fuck out. I don't care. This is me ranting, so get the fuck out. I don't care. You don't have to listen to it. Second caveat. My belief in government. Now, in my younger cynical days, I was very anti-government, very much a, the black helicopters are circling kind of dude during the Clinton years. And if I have to give both Bush and President Bush and President Obama credit for anything, it's making me believe that our government can be an effective and positive part of people's lives. President Bush, because he fucked up so many things so badly that it showed the effect of bad government. President Obama, because he showed and inspired the idea that a transparent, accountable government can be an effective and positive part of people's lives. It can be. Soapbox moment for a minute here about all the people who bitch and moan about, the government's always the solution, always the problem, never the solution. Your government is what you make of it, which means your government is based on who you choose to run it. The people you vote into office and their beliefs directly impact the efficacy of the government and how it's positive or negative. If you put people into power who do not believe that said power can be used positively, you will not get a positive government. You will not get a government that is effective in helping your life or anybody else's life other than the people whose masters they serve. So if you have a problem with government process, then it's not the process. It's the people making the process. It's the people making that policy. So you can bitch about the government all you want, but if you don't like it, go vote. And go vote for people who, at the very least, promise that they want to make government work for you. Now, granted, all politicians say they want to help. Pay attention to not only their words, but their actions. And it's quite clear to me that actions have spoken, or inaction has spoken quite loudly, especially in the case of this pandemic. So let's start motherfucking the government, shall we? In the beginning, there was coronavirus. And coronavirus, reached our shores in January, late January. And I, like others, made plenty of jokes about pangolin lung and bat flu soup, because it started in wet markets and all that. Many a joke. Very black humor. Certainly with the idea that it wouldn't hit us. Because, let's face it, our government has handled this in the past. The H1N1 epidemic in 2012, 2011, something like that. No, during the Obama administration. Total of 12,000 people worldwide. Total of 12,000 deaths. Thereabouts. Now that's terrible. And yet, let's compare, shall we? It takes us less than 2 weeks right now to get 12,000 deaths from this pandemic. Coincidence? I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear that the way one administration handled something is not the way another administration handled something. And, the Trump administration has killed 176,000 plus people and still going. I mean, it shows no signs of abating. We're at, I think somebody said, the 29th straight day of 1,000 plus deaths. 1,000 plus deaths per day. Per day. Okay? What did we lose? Like 3,000 something at 9/11? Which has been one of the largest, most far-ranging, effective events in my life. And I'm getting close. I'm almost 50 now. Almost. Not quite. Almost. And yet that one, we, again, 3-4 days, we've surpassed that at this stage. So, what did the government do in the beginning for the first month and a half? Let's say 2 months, because I believe the first real Senate briefing on it was in the 21st, 22nd of January, and most of the country went into lockdown in mid-March. So let's say 2 months. 2 months, what happened? There was a moderate travel ban on travel between here and China. Moderate. It didn't completely lock everything down. As a matter of fact, I think estimates are that about 40,000 people traveled to and from China and America during the ban. Now, I don't know what that is, how many a day normally, in normal times would travel between China and America, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot, and more than 40,000. But still, if you think about 40,000 people, all of which could potentially be infected, or if they leave and come back, could be infected over there and come back. And again, using the math of if it's if one infected person is infecting 1.18 people per day, it's going to infect 1.18 people, then 40,000 is, you can start to see the math there. There's potential 40,000, carrier monkeys running around giving stuff to people without knowing it. And we did temperature checks. And the CDC put out the guidance that said you don't have to wear a mask. In fact, they specifically told people, don't go out and buy a bunch of masks. Don't wear a mask unless you're showing symptoms, because we don't want to, run out to the healthcare workers. Now, an effective national government would have seen one case, quarantine that dude, contact trace the fuck out of him, quarantine all of those people, and started ramping up whatever testing capacity they could get immediately and putting it in the hands of the places where the outbreaks happen. Immediate. Like, somebody makes a call and it's already started. Before the call is over, somebody has already kicked into motion testing. We didn't do that. As a matter of fact, I think we waited like 3 weeks to a month because the CDC's test failed and they weren't allowed to use other tests from other countries or other vendors or what, for whatever reason, political or just incompetence. I don't know. At this point, it's hard to tell the difference in some cases. We didn't do the massive testing and contact tracing, and it started to spread. And it got into New York, which again, that is the worst, absolute worst place for something like that to get. If you get one person in New York, clearly we saw what happened. It just exploded because, people are living assholes to elbows in New York and working and doing all this stuff. And it's going to happen. You can't control a infectious disease like that in a place like New York without seriously draconian measures. And we didn't. It was probably a few weeks after it got in New York before they really started to lock down. And again, in those early times, I don't necessarily have a problem with not having immediately locked it down because we were still learning. But once it got bad in New York and lockdowns were absolutely necessary there, it should have been abundantly clear that lockdowns are going to be the most effective way to stop things. And there's still, in many cases, lockdown in New York. There's a lot of restrictions on what you can do in New York right now. The response in New York with the lockdowns and all that helped a good bit in New York, even though they had like massive deaths because, again, it had gotten away from them. But the government, and specifically the CDC, with the mask thing, I want to talk about for a second. So they didn't tell people. They told people not to wear masks because they didn't want people going out and buying up a fuckload of masks and depleting the national mask supply. Why not do something right then and there, just off the board? Could have been done without any necessary for congressional approval, any of that. Is invoke the Defense Production Act, which was invoked like 2 months down the road to start building up a stockpile of masks. And this is the kind of thing that has to come from a federal level. And that, I think, is going to be a theme throughout this. It's a theme of leadership and of resources. The thing about controlling pandemics, it's not about the disease itself. It's about the speed and efficiency with which you implement measures to control, however it transmits. I mean, if we somehow had a disease that was transmitted by, eyesight, if the government doesn't come out and say, like the day after they recognize that, if they don't come out and say, stop looking at each other, here's some blindfolds, let's go bird box on this motherfucker, then you can't effectively control something. If you don't take the steps needed to control it, it will not be controlled. And the mask thing, which could have saved, I've heard something like 30,000 lives, started early in conjunction with the Defense Production Act being used to produce masks to make sure that we don't have PPE shortage, personal protective shortage for healthcare workers. You're just going to end up with, no effective control measure whatsoever, which is what happened. The CDC, probably under orders from the president, or at the very least under pressure from the White House, to not make a big deal of the coronavirus because it might affect stocks and it might affect the economy and people might be afraid and all that. The CDC should have issued a mask mandate immediately. If 2 months later we determine it's not a big deal, then just say, okay, we're wrong, it's not a big deal. But in the case of public health, for an infectious disease, you actually have to err on the side of preventative measures as opposed to, well, it may not be that effective. Well, fuck, if it may not be that effective, but if it's like a 1% effective, we're talking about, 170,000 lives. 1% of that is still a pretty decent number of people to save. So even if we determined that it wasn't, 100% effective, 50% effective, whatever, it still would have been something. And again, that's something that should have happened immediately. Defense Production Act to make more masks and, telling people, hey, wear the mask. It's probably a good idea. Possibly a good idea. But again, over and over, we're going to see, and we continue to see every day, a lack of federal response due to a lack of leadership. And if this has taught us nothing else, it's that the words of one man in the right place can be vital, can literally cost lives. And so we should hope that that's the right man. Well, clearly we do not have the right man. Because getting back to the mask thing, it wasn't just that we didn't put a mask mandate on at the beginning. I understand the thought process behind that, but though I think it was wrong-headed. But when we finally did determine, masks, they probably might be a little bit effective, so we should probably do that. We recommend that. Rather than President Trump saying, yeah, CDC, health people say this is probably effective, so you go ahead and do it. Just that little bit would have made so much difference. Now, clearly he should have said, masks are effective, we got to control this, national mask mandate, no ifs, ands, or buts. This is just something that has to happen. Sure, I'm sure there would have been state governments that would have sued. There would have been people that would have sued over it. Let that happen. Let them sue about that. Get a precedent for public health emergencies in law, on the books that says, hey, in public health emergencies, fuck yes, the government can tell you to put a damn mask on your face, you fucking idiot. But we didn't have that. We didn't even have the least amount of, yeah, you should probably do that. What we had was, it's completely optional, and I'm not going to wear one, which suddenly morphed into this fucking idiotic debate over mask and turning wearing a mask into a political statement. You want to make a political statement with a mask? Wear MAGA on your fucking mask. Put that on your mall. Okay? Or, coexist. Or, 420. I don't give a fuck. Make a political statement with your mask. I.e., over your gob. But no, we didn't have that. We had the very idea of wearing a mask being questioned as, not only questioned, challenged as a restriction on freedom. I can't even with these folks. I just can't even. There's a meme out there about I didn't know the leopards would eat my face. If a Democrat tells you leopards are going to eat your face and you stick your puss directly in a leopard's maw, don't blame the Democrats for not warning you that leopards will eat your face. You probably should have known. But to go out and have these mass armed, mind you, protests against lockdowns and mask wearing, while there are doctors and nurses working just ungodly hours watching people die left and right because your dumb ass can't wear a mask. How dare you? This is not a political thing. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Okay? It's not hard. Put a mask on your maw, stay away from fucking people, we can get it under control. It's not an infringement on your freedom to try to save your life and to try to keep you, by the way, from killing a bunch of other people. Because you may not get it if you're not wearing a mask. You may not get it because everybody else is wearing a mask. But you sure as fuck could give it to somebody else, including people you might actually care about, if you have the capacity to care about other people. Because that's what it's literally about. That is what the whole political thing about mask is literally about. Do you give a fuck enough about people who are not you to go and inconvenience yourself a little bit? And I think that's really instructive of not only a political ideology, but a personal philosophy. Now, I hate wearing a mask. I live in Mississippi. It's 99% humid at 95 degrees like every fucking day of August. It is unbearable even when you don't wear a mask. That's why we have air conditioning. That's why we don't go outside in August. Because it's hot. And let me tell you, walking anywhere outside in a mask in Mississippi August heat is hellish. But I'd much rather do that. I'd much rather be inconvenienced to my own self than I would put somebody through the danger of COVID. Because I may have it and not know it. Just may. I can't tell. And one of the other things we severely fucked up on, top and bottom, local government, state government, federal government, has failed on is the testing. Time for the grumpy face.